Good afternoon and welcome back. This is US Home Talk. We are live every Wednesday at noon and on demand at ushometalk.com or wherever you guys find your podcasts. I'm your host, Marcus Walgrave with the South Dakota Home Team powered by Hague Realtors. Jason Walgrave with the Walgrave Real Estate Group at RE/MAX Advantage Plus. Also in studio, Evan Little, our phenomenal producer, making sure that we are putting out the best podcast we possibly can when it comes to real estate. We're taking all your questions today and during the show. Anything and everything real estate. Our call-in number is 612-234-7585. Again, 612-234-7585. Or you can leave us a message in the comments section on Facebook. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Doing fantastic. Happy to be here. Sun's out. Spring is basically here. The market is hot. We're rocking and rolling. So it's a good day.
It is a good day. It's a good day. It's the beginning of March. Not quite calendar spring, but like you said, no. Jason, definitely real estate spring. I think when you get those mild winters, and then you get some of these warm February days, and it just gets everybody thinking, hey, it's coming up soon here where we need to start getting going and thinking about buying or selling or investing in real estate, and we got a lot going on. So Jason, I know I work close with your team and the Minnesota real estate team up there in the Twin Cities area. Very blessed to have a big brother like yourself kind of plugging my name and letting everybody know that, hey, if anybody's looking to transfer jobs or relocate into the South Dakota to Sioux Falls area, they have a good resource in myself because that's the market I service. You were up in the Twin Cities area. You have been a realtor for 20 plus years. Yep. I remember, I think it was one of our first shows last year. You were telling me about how once you hit certain year markers, there's a certain way to describe your experience. So you're not quite 20 plus. And that goes by increments of 10, or when you get to 25, do you get to start plugging 25?
I'm thinking increments of 10.
Are you 25?
Actually, this is my 25th year, but I think even when I get to 30 years, I'm still going to be 20 plus. It's just from here on forward, it's 20 plus years in the business.
I guess you don't want to date yourself. So once you get over 20, I mean, you're kind of bragging, right?
Well, I mean, I think I was an expert after year one, but 25 years definitely makes
when you sell like a couple hundred homes in your first year, I mean that definitely helps with the experience and the expertise. So we're gonna have a great show today. We're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna be talking about title companies, some title company 101. It's just one of those situations, right, Jason? In real estate, us realtors, we're representing buyers, we're representing sellers, we're representing investors. We have closings on a weekly basis. I think once you kind of get into your real estate career, especially maybe in those first 5 to 10 years range, you maybe take things for granted in terms of like what you've learned as a real estate professional. But in those first couple years, and definitely at the consumer level, you just, you haven't done it enough to really understand, what the title company is for. And so we're going to go over that today. Just some of the title company 101s and to get that information out there, just so you guys are confident in terms of what's going on during your real estate transaction. And like we said, the spring market's here. So, better to get some basic understanding of the process of a real estate transaction today. And then you can be more confident with the purchasing and selling of real estate, investing in real estate here in the upcoming weeks and months, because it's going to get busy. And we talk about this all the time. First-time home buyers, first-time move-up buyers. Obviously, they're in that position where this is their first purchase, or maybe their second purchase, first sale. But even that third or fourth-time move-up buyer. in my experience, Jason, I see first time home buyers. They tend to purchase their home, and I'm reaching out to them, or they're reaching out to me in that 4 to 6 window. I think statistically over the last handful of decades, it's closer to like 7 to 8 years. But I feel like since I've been a realtor, 10 plus years, that kind of that trend seems to be moving a little bit quicker. That first time home buyer is selling, in 3 to 4 years, in kind of a situation. So, but what I'm getting at is that, okay, first time buyer, first time move out buyer, by the time you buy that third house, you're kind of settling into it, right? And I think that that's where you start seeing that statistic of saying, hey, you're going to sell your house once every 8 years. It's like, well, the first couple, you may do that a little bit quicker, but that third one, maybe that fourth one, you're sitting in it for 20 years. You're kind of, it might be one of those situations where your family has grown to where you guys are comfortable with, and you're simply wanting to have some stability with housing, and you say it there and you say, you know what, we're going to stay in this house till the kids move out, and then we're empty nesters, and then we're going to start getting back into the real estate game. And so you think about it, it's like, man, like, those first 3 purchases, on average, you're probably spreading them out over 30 plus years. And you're only doing a real estate transaction on average, once every 10 years. So it's understandable on why, even if you are an experienced home buyer, this type of information kind of seems foreign or just by default of, well, yeah, I mean, if you only do one thing once every 10 years, it's like, yeah, it's kind of hard to be dialed in and to remember all the details.
Right.
So today we are going to be talking about title company. What is a title company? Pretty much in a nutshell, a title company is a third party that is hired by the buyer and or a lender. And when you kind of look at that and the idea behind that, it's what they're really trying to do is they're trying to reduce liability when they're looking to in a real estate transaction. And having that third party to kind of create that service is very important. Obviously they're looking to work for the buyer, work for the lender. But as we'll get later in the show, title companies work for sellers too. I think just the most of it, I think a lot of people kind of look at it in terms of a service that is being provided to the buyer and or the buyer's lender.
Yeah, I think, that to how I explain it to clients, the title company's main job is to make sure what you're purchasing is free and clear of any encumbrances or any liens on the property. And so if you're a home buyer and you're going to go out and spend $400,000 or $500,000 on a home, you want to make sure that no one else has any rights to that property. And delivering. So there's two sides of the transaction. The seller needs to deliver free and clear title to the buyer. The buyer, they get to choose what title company location to close at, but each buyer and seller get to choose their own title company. So oftentimes they're different. Buyer has their title company, seller has their title company. They work incredibly well together because we all have a common goal, which is to get the property closed and make sure that title is free and clear. They provide, generally an owner's policy or title insurance is what is provided in today's world. If you go back 20 plus years, there was an abstract was an option, and that's a complete history of the property that goes back, sometimes 150 or more years. They don't do those. I haven't seen one in over a decade. They're just the cost to reproduce them, and title insurance has taken the place of that to protect the buyer. I'll give an example, because I'll get that question from buyers. Well, do I need the title insurance? The example I give is I had a seller a number of years ago, and they had built purchased a home in a new development. They got relocated, so it was only a year and a half or so after they purchased it, they had to move out of state due to job transfer. And the developer of that development, something had happened. He didn't pay the excavator. So the excavator put a $250,000 lien on the entire development, on every single home in that development. If my client didn't have that title insurance, we wouldn't have been able to sell that house and close on that deal until that lien had been satisfied. The title insurance protected him. We were able to get through it. No issues for my client. So working with title companies, it's an absolute necessity in my mind. Not all states work with title companies. Some states work with attorneys, and you close at a law office. But I think the majority of the states in the Midwest are working with title companies. We work with Trademark Title. They do a phenomenal job. They've been in the business many, many years and have helped tens of thousands of clients deliver free and clear title for the purchase of their home.
That experience obviously is super valuable. You know, when you're talking about that chain of title, like you're describing, Jason, the full history of the home's ownership or the property's ownership, you know, being able to go back and see, you know, what is going on, who truly owns the property. Obviously, if you're buying it, you want to make sure you're buying it from the person who owns it. You know, we're at all-time record highs for fraud, and there's definitely, you know, they're getting very, very advanced, you know, the people who are doing fraud, and that's one of the ways that you can really avoid something like that. You talked about the title research, Jason, you know, and the liens. You know, when we talk about some liens, you kind of reference the excavator, you know, but there's other liens out there as well. You got the medical liens, you got financial liens. You know, you kind of gave the example of the excavator, or it could be something even smaller, right? Maybe a previous owner had their house reshingled from a storm and they never paid the roofer. You know, it could be something like that where it's very specific, not to a development, and that lien is then attached to every property there, but it could be a mechanical lien that's very specific to that exact house. Medical liens. You know, if you have a seller that maybe you know, wasn't able to pay a medical bill, they you know, got into an accident and had to go to the ER room, didn't have, you know, the funds to pay for that. And you know, medical institutes, you know, if they don't get paid, you know, they will file a medical lien against an individual, or a judgment against an individual, and filed with the county, and that attaches to the individual, and that's where we talk about that free and clear title, right? I think if you're a buyer out there, that's what you're going to want to have when you purchase real estate, free and clear. So that means that when you show up to closing and you exchange ownership of said property, nobody can come back to you, regardless if there are maybe some items out there, and that's what the free and clear means. And another thing that title research does, it can help find some easements. When we talk about easements, I mean, there's utility easements. And I think that's one that we maybe most commonly recognize, you know, whether it's a gas line or an electrical power tower, you know, lines going over there. You know, knowing those easements are going to be very important. You know, if it was something that you're going to be buying a property and you were like, yeah, I need to have a 6-foot privacy fence. I'm a dog breeder. You know, so I need to have that. It's like, well, you know, you got to understand, you know, the restrictions on certain easements and how that plays into it. Also, they kind of can help explain a survey, a land survey. You know, if you are a buyer out there and you are taking a home loan, or you need to finance your purchase, you know, that lender is going to require a survey to be a part of that. And then when the survey comes back, the title company can look over the survey and they can kind of explain to you, hey, by the way, just want to let you know, you know, based on this survey, we see that your neighbor's landscaping or your neighbor's fence is encroaching onto your property by 6 feet. It's like, okay, well, that's something that you may want to address right out of the gates. Try to get that resolved, in a timely manner, and it just kind of brings those things to light instead of it's beyond the thing, and then you get in a big, huge dispute with your neighbor about whose landscaping is it, or the whose fence is it, etc. Who needs to be responsible for this big 60-foot maple tree. And it's like, well, all these items are going to be brought to your attention, and you can kind of, if you have questions or issues, you can resolve them prior to closing if you choose to. So you'd mentioned the title insurance, buyer's insurance, lender's insurance. One thing to kind of keep in mind, this is a one-time purchase. It's not like homeowners insurance where it's a annual cost. Those are line items that are put on your settlement statement. So I think that's one thing that's important. Do all buyers need to purchase title insurance or owner's insurance? Well, no. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. If you're a cash buyer, if you don't want to have a land survey, you don't need to have that done. It's not required if you're a cash buyer. You don't need lender's insurance, obviously, because you're not financing your purchase. But the buyer's insurance, title insurance, I think that's highly recommended. Again, kind of to your point, Jason, where not all buyers need to use a title company, but even if you're a cash buyer out there, there's a ton of value that a title company is going to provide to cash buyers as well. Mm-hmm. When we kind of go into the title company, one thing that I think a lot of us can recognize and remember from when we had our last real estate transaction, is the closing part of it. They assist with that service as well. They're providing settlement statements for buyers, and they're providing the settlement statements to sellers. Obviously everybody's going to want to know, what's the exact numbers we're going to look at, in terms of what does the buyer need to bring to the table for cash to close. Most likely the seller is going to be in a position to receive some proceeds, so they're going to want to see that, and everything's line itemed. So you can see, okay, what are the fees, out there? What are these title fees? What are the realtor compensation, real estate brokerage compensation fees, appraisal fees, property inspection fees? They're all on that settlement statement that a title company can provide. We have TRID laws in effect, so now it is a time where buyers, they legally have to have received that, 3 business days prior to closing. And sit there and, okay, well, why is that a federal law? And it's like, well, buyer needs to know, everything on there. And if they got questions, that allows them that time that 3 days to say, hey, well, what's this? Why is this line item on there? And they can ask those questions instead of first time seeing it, they show up to title or the day of closing and they got questions because they've never seen that before. So there's some really good changes that have happened, in the last 10 years, and that being one of them. So, but sellers obviously like to know it too, because, they're always kind of curious. We can provide, us as realtors, Jason, we can provide an estimated settlement statement, and if you're experienced in real estate and the title companies and the process. Personally, I'm usually within $350 plus or minus to what the title company comes out to, and so those are all very nice, favorable services that a title company provides.
Yeah, and the title company handles all the funds, right? So the buyer you typically wire in their cash, and then the mortgage company will wire in the mortgage funds. The title company will take those funds, and then they'll, on the seller side, they'll pay off the mortgage. That's a common question I get with new first-time home sellers that we have is, well, how does the loan get paid off, or how do I pay off the mortgage? And well, you don't have to pay off the mortgage. The title company does it. So they'll pay off the mortgage. They'll prorate and pay off the taxes if there's any taxes, if there's any liens on the property. If either party, buyer or seller, has any judgments, those can get paid off at closing. So the title company acts as a master accountant to make sure that everybody is paid and all debts are settled, and that the deed is transferred free and clear to the new buyer, and it's smooth. The
Yeah,
transaction.
smooth, right?
I can't. I've only worked with title companies in my entire career. I can't imagine, because I hear about it. We work with a lot of investors, and I hear of stories of people selling real estate, just buying and selling real estate without the assistance of a real estate agent or a title company. And it's just, to me, that's just nuts. For both parties, buyers and sellers, you're going to attempt to complete a transaction and hope that it's done correctly when you're talking about several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that
Or
doesn't
millions
happen,
in some cases.
or millions in some
You know,
cases, right? And so it doesn't happen often, but the title companies are just they're critical in making the buying and selling process of real estate as smooth as possible, and making sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and that the transaction is clean and title is securely transferred to the next buyer, and funds are received and dispersed accordingly. So it's just a really critical piece to a good transaction.
yeah, the smoothness, right? And not only that, but our purchase contracts, they're legally binding contracts, and they have a date. They have a closing date that's on there, and if you're not able to satisfy a closing date, that may give a party an out. If they want to, maybe a seller got a better offer sitting in the back pocket. And it's like, oh, if you're a buyer and you're not having these things done prior to, and you get to a situation, you're like, hey, I need another 30 days because I got to take care of a XYZ item. A seller doesn't have to extend the closing date 30 days. So the title companies can provide that preliminary title work, weeks prior to closing, and kind of giving everybody a chance to resolve any issues that may have come up on that preliminary title work. Jason, you mentioned about how they act as that escrow agent, right? So many people, not that many people want to receive a check at closing, or they don't want to bring a check. They want to have everything wired. They work with the banks to work with that because they have so much experience doing so many transactions. They know, like, hey, if you're going to be working with this big bank, historically, they're 3 to 5 business days to process a wire. So if you plan on bringing your cash to close via wire transfer, you better get it going. And here are the instructions on how to complete such wire transfer. The professional payments, we get that all the time. It's like, hey, when I show up to closing, if I'm representing a buyer, or even if I'm representing a seller, they say, hey, there was this an item during the property inspection contingency that both buyer and I we split. We split the costs on it. Do I write that person a check today? And it's like, well, you can, or you can just let the title company take care of those checks. The title company will write the appraiser a check. The title company will write the inspector a check. The title company will write a subcontractor a check for the services that they did. So again, it's all clean. It's all done. It's all done at one place. Very smooth, kind of what you said. But also too, one thing that's I find just incredibly valuable with working with the title company, when you do have those liens and judgments, because those things, those items are filed with the county, they work with the counties to get those items paid off. If somebody's like, well, I'm just going to go down to the county and write them a check. Okay, you can do that. But to prove that it was paid, the county has to process the check, and your bank has to show that it was that check was processed as well. So maybe if it's a smaller county, they may not run checks until the end of the month. So if you're hoping to close on the first week in a month, and you thought that if you just ran down to the county to take care of this item that you got to pay for was going to be the easiest way, that's not likely the case. It's probably the most difficult way, because if you just let the title company maybe add it as a line item on your settlement statement, they can take care of it, and they won't have to worry about that getting processed, extending closing another 30, 45 days. So, these title companies are exceptional to work with. As us as realtors, that's kind of our ultimate goal, right? We want to work for our clients, service our clients in the real estate and for their real estate needs and their goals, and achieve those goals. But also having the smoothest transaction possible, because anytime you're talking about such a large transaction, if it can go smooth, extremely smooth, I mean, it's that cherry on top, and it can really start you in the right direction, whether it's buying or selling or investing. So title companies, they're awesome to work with, and you don't need to know them. What title company is out there. You can lean on your real estate broker, your realtor, your real estate agent. I know in our market, Jason, this is something that we kind of run into. I know I did early in my career. It's very common that who schedules the closing. Is it the realtor's responsibility, or is it the lender's responsibility? So I mean, that's something to, again, just to lean on your professionals, whether it's your realtor or your lender, and they're going to point you in the right direction on which title company to work with. So. That's what we got for today's show. Title company is definitely key to work with if you want to have a nice, smooth transaction. And, as we come to the end of today's show, we want to thank you all for taking your time to tune in live and for your support of U.S. Home Talk. As always, you can find today's show and all of our past shows on our website, ushometalk.com, or wherever you guys find your podcasts. This is Marcus Walgrave and Jason Walgrave. Have yourself a blessed week.